Good morning, Don't Unfriend Me Nation. My name is Matthew Spear. I am the host of Don't Unfriend Me. Good to have you here. I hope you had a good weekend. It's 9/11, and no, this isn't a 9/11 episode, but it is focused on the freedoms of this country, and I think that's important, especially today. For anyone who lost loved ones on 9/11 or after, whether that be first responders or military veterans, I know several friends who did not make it back. You are remembered. You'll never be forgotten. Are your rights unequivocal? Does that mean they're unalienable? That they're absolute? In the iron gall ink in the parchment that they were written upon, are they forever resolute? Well, most people will tell you, yes, they are. And that's true, and it's false. You can change things. When it comes to amendments, we've done it 27 times before. You can also change things with executive overreach, like Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and even Donald Trump did it with executive orders. Donald Trump's were more reactive, removing things that were done by Barack Obama. And then, of course, Joe Biden's were what he says proactive by reinstating them. Puppet. But I digress. The Founding Fathers just got done fighting a tyrannical war and a revolution against the crown. And when we look at that, when they sat down to write the Declaration of Independence, and then after that, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, etc., they weren't focused on knitting clubs. They weren't looking at their local Peabody Award winners. They weren't looking for Pulitzers. They weren't really even looking to expand their own titles and lands and how rich they would be for being people who forged this country into what it was. No, they were looking on how they could ensure that the newly formed government of these United States would not end up like every other democracy in the world, whether it be the Greeks or the Romans, or what looks to be us as we move further and further away from our republic. They gave us nothing. Wait a second, what? What do you mean, Matt? They gave us the Bill of Rights. They gave us the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Articles. What do you mean? Those freedoms were inherent. The only thing they did was put it on paper, and not to tell you that you have these freedoms or they're granted by the government. It was to remind the government that the people are empowered to always be recognized for these inalienable rights. Or unalienable rights. Either one is correct, depending upon what time period. If you're going to quote unalienable, but you can say inalienable. Does that mean that these rights are absolute, that they can never be changed? No, they can. We know this. But most importantly, a lot of Democrats are now saying that they're not absolute. The Constitution is not absolute. So therefore, they can make changes because changes were made before them. That's dangerous. And why is it dangerous? Well, because there's a few things. If you want to add an amendment to the Constitution of the United States or the state's constitution, and this is the way it works. It's fairly simple. 2/3 of the majority have to go ahead and vote for that. An amendment is easier to propose, but it's harder to remove. Why? Well, the Founding Fathers believe that the amendments that were added, obviously to get something that was pressing or important with the times, should be a little bit easier than removing it, because we wouldn't have added it unless it was important to begin with. Now, Democrats will tell you that the 14th Amendment is an end-all be-all for all of them, just like the 10th Amendment is usually a Republican focus when it comes to bringing the power back to the states. But there are limits. And these limits are that if you're going to change an amendment or remove an amendment, you need 3/4 of the vote. Nothing about executive orders, nothing about emergency powers, but this is what happens when you have people like Joe Biden who decide with a sweep of a pen to change the way the American people have decided the country should be and how it should look. This has empowered the president of the governors, who is Joe Biden. He's actually not the president of the people. Why people say that, I don't understand. The governor is actually the president of the people of your state. And now the governors feel wanton power to go ahead with broad sweeping non-legislative powers to change the constitution of the aforementioned state. New Mexico, if you have not heard, there is a lady named Michelle Lynn Lujan Grisham. Now, the interesting thing about Michelle Lynn Lujan Grisham is that she has 4 names, and usually my 3-name rule is in effect. Usually people who assassinate presidents and others are usually referred to by third names, but also crazy Karens as well. She has 4, so obviously we can prepare for more nonsensical garbage from this governor of New Mexico. The interesting thing and the sad thing about this whole story is there was an 11-year-old boy who was shot near Isotopes Park in a road rage incident. They don't have any suspects. They have a picture of the vehicle, and they're offering a $2,500 arrest for tips leading to the arrest of the shooter. I wonder how much the press conference, the legislation, the civil suits are going to be. I bet it's on more than $2,500, but with a state with the record of New Mexico, I'm sure the coffers are dry. We'll talk a little bit about their rankings and why this pittance of a reward is being offered. This should be in the tens of thousands of dollars in order to find justice for this family. Instead, what this wonderful, wonderful governor has decided to do, Miss Grisham, like a bad Grisham novel, has decided to go ahead and suspend the right to bear arms in her state. Now, this is only for 30 days. This is just to, what are we, 14 days to bend the curve, to control the curve, 14 days to flatten the curve, 30 days to do what? Well, she's openly admitted that this will do absolutely nothing to stop crime. This will do nothing to prevent shootings, but she's doing it as a reminder, almost like a punishment for a child that takes a cookie by putting them in the timeout. But the child didn't take the cookie, but we're going to punish them anyway because doing something is better than doing nothing, at least in her eyes. The real problem for New Mexico and what they need to understand is that each one of these civil cases that could rear up, because it is guaranteed in the state's constitution for New Mexicans to be able to carry firearms. The sheriff really is not backing this up like most sheriffs. Most sheriffs in Virginia, when they were going after guns here, created gun-safe zones where you could bring your firearms, store them at a friend's or family's house, and you would not be held accountable for having them in the places where the guns were not allowed. He is addressed with a 10-step program on ways to fight gun crime, and they may not be lockstep with the governor, but that's because they follow the rule of law. You know, the powers that the sheriff is supposed to have, and not ones that he is not supposed to have. The interesting thing is that most sheriffs, like I said, follow the Constitution, not because they're required to, but because they believe that that is where their obligations lie. If you take a look at some of the things that this governor said, I'll show you them right now, you will be surprised at her positions. I want you to listen to the words, and I want you to listen to some of the things that Democrats have said, rallying against her because this issue has a chance to be the crux as abortion was in 2022 during the midterms. Listen to this. You know, when I watch this, I immediately think of Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, and I hear the music in the background as the bladed yellow jacket samurai decides to come in and start separating craniums from evil, what were they? The crazy 88's shoulders, something to that effect. Except, of course, she has the New Mexico sun emblazoned upon her neck with the latest Santa Fe jewelry as she sits up on high in the rich area of New Mexico in Santa Fe, while all the peasants below do the dirty work. We serve these people at Apple all the time, and they would come up and they would scream at us because the Apple store was in dirty, disgusting Albuquerque and not in rich, beautiful Santa Fe. Oh, the terror clutched the pearls. In this case, the land of enchantment sun across your neck. These people make me sick. Listen to this.
Yes, all the examples you cited are crimes. Kids shooting at other kids, shooting from cars. So what's the value of the civil order?
What a wonderful question. What is the value of the civil emergency order, which doesn't exist and is an overreach of powers, as we've said, is that she's punishing law-abiding citizens. Because the people who actually do these shootings and harm 11-year-old kids or do drive-bys that take mothers who are expecting out of the category of life have nothing to do with following laws. That's the problem to begin with. Listen to her answer.
Not just doing better law enforcement.
Both. The value of the order is that it gives me 3 things. 1, it says it's a statewide issue and it's a message to everyone to start leveraging their resources and arresting people.
So what it's giving a message, a clear message to use your statewide resources and arrest people. Why isn't that taking place to begin with? Unless you're talking about arresting every citizen who has a firearm, which you are now stating, because you are saying it is illegal for the next 30 days for anyone but law enforcement to have a firearm, whether they have a concealed carry permit or not.
2, the jurisdictions come at this, including with the DOJ restrictions, differently, without the leveraging and the additional resources, arresting, and where do they go? We got to make sure that everyone is bumping up their services. It's a message to the Metropolitan Detention Center. It's a message to the HMOs. You better figure out treatment. We have been sort of stalled out, to your point. This order basically says, stop stalling out, and to your point, just arrest everyone. Well, I also have to have the ability, I can't arrest everyone. There are literally too many people to arrest.
So the problem isn't, did you just hear what she said? I mean, seriously, I'm supposed to do this with a straight face. It's not that arresting people just randomly for no other reason than that they're following the constitutional precedent, that they have a right to bear arms and that they are citizens who are well within their rights to do so. They don't have any felonies. There's no restrictions. They're not on a no-fly list. There's no reason that they can't have a firearm. It's not court ordered. They're not on parole. There's no reason. They're not carrying it in areas where they're not supposed to, like a church or federal property or a ball game. You just want to arrest them because they have a gun. But the problem truly is not that. It's not that. The problem is that there's too many for you to arrest. Holy shit. Thank you for saying the quiet part out loud, Karen 2.0.
This would allow us, huh?
If someone's got a concealed carry permit in Albuquerque walking down a public street, they're not going to get arrested.
I can make the point that maybe they should be. And this is the point. I'm willing to do anything and everything.
Do you understand that never, I can't even believe I'm not even using proper English. Can you not never ever believe that these people weren't that they were? My blood pressure's up. Can you believe what she's saying? Does anyone really know what a concealed carry permit is? It takes 8 hours of a written and verbal class to qualify. You then have to qualify at 3 different stages to prove that you are capable to use that firearm effectively and on target. And even then, it's not a license to kill. This isn't 007. She's not British Parliament. She's not Q, for God's sakes. Or M, sorry. Q is the good guy. M. She's not Judi Dench, even though she somewhat looks like her. She looks vapid, but still that tracksuit is just glamorous. Anyway, the point is, and to be clear, is that there has never been a mass shooting perpetrated by anyone with a concealed carry in U.S. history, ever, not one. They have a gun on them almost every minute of the day. I've got one here. I've got one near the shower. I've got one in my car. I've got one from afar. They're like green eggs and ham. And we don't do those things because we're law-abiding citizens. In fact, most police in Leo who pull us over or interact with us find out we're concealed carry. They visibly relax once they know where the gun is located because they know that the person who's in front of them isn't a complete douchebag, that they don't have a criminal record. And she's saying, yes, you know what? Maybe we should go and arrest all people with a concealed carry license or CCW.
Within a shred of evidence-based effort. Because if you're not horrified that on any street corner in too many cities in New Mexico,
specifically Democrat-run cities all over the United States, not just New Mexico, but, let's go ahead and pretend that this is just isolated to Tucumcari and Albuquerque and Taos and other places inside of New Mexico.
There is someone with a gun sticking out of their waist or their belt. And I'll tell you, if you're a young person, you're not allowed to have a handgun.
Well, it's a crime already.
I got it, but we won't be able to arrest all of them. So imagine, just in a perfect world, if this was upheld, it gives all of these police officers the ability to focus on the real criminals.
Last follow-up.
Yeah.
You took
But your point is valid.
You took an oath to...
Your point is valid, but I'm just going to go ahead and say I want to arrest him anyway. It doesn't give the APD any more capability to do their job. It makes it harder. And the reason why is because if they see a crime committed, they are supposed to stop it. And what you're saying is that if APD pulls somebody over who has a CCW or a CCL, the state would arrest them, but the city wouldn't. You're opening this up for an absolute epic proportional lawsuit that is going to bankrupt New Mexico. Because right there alone, you're giving conflicting orders to two different agencies. You're weaponizing the state and you're making the city impotent. This is the problem with Democratic policy. They sound great. Their policies always sound great. They are so lofty and so beautiful. Let's ban cows. Let's just stop taking flights. Let's go ahead and implement the Green New Deal. Let's go ahead and give people a bunch of money and reward them for having kids, but not give them the infrastructure and the education in order to be successful. Let's not give them the family values to teach them that staying together is great for Black communities. And let's go ahead and introduce unfair laws and punishments for a drug that we introduced in the first place, and then go ahead and keep them down so they have nothing but crime to go ahead and result to. Fantastic. Sounds wonderful, but unfortunately what happens is you have what you have today, which are democratically run cities. 37 out of the top 50 most violent cities are ran by Democrats. Period. Full stop.
Constitution, isn't it unconstitutional to say you cannot exercise your carry license?
With one exception, and that is if there's an emergency, and I've declared an emergency for a temporary amount of time, I can invoke additional powers.
No, you cannot. The only thing you can do is that there are certain restrictions to amendments. In fact, 9 out of the 10 amendments, besides the third, which is quartering of troops, have been changed or altered in one way or another. We can simply say fire in a theater. You can say it. They're not restricting speech. That's the problem that she doesn't make clear. You can still say fire in a theater, but there are repercussions for the speech that you do. Breaking the law is the exception. If you break the law, you can suspend people's rights. We know this. You can't carry a firearm. You can't vote in an election. You get thrown in jail. There are a lot of things that happen, but breaking the law is the actual key to this. This is the overall crib key to the equation. What she's saying is that I can declare emergency powers, welcome to COVID powers, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who put in emergency powers in place, and suspend habeas corpus or suspend the right to a trial and go ahead and punish you simply because it is her wanton whim. That is not what the Constitution says. That is not what the state constitution says. And that is not what emergency powers are used for. She doesn't know what she's talking about, and she is lying. Period.
No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute.
Your oath isn't absolute, my lord. How did this in New Mexico, you already were a complete This puts the whipped cream on top. Really quick, just so you understand, David Hogg and David Liu, these are guys who are advocates for banning all guns in the United States. David Gunn, even though he shoots trap, even though he has guns in his family, and there's videos of him on TikTok firing clay, he believes all guns should be banned. And of course, David Liu does the same thing. But the interesting thing is the marching orders are coming out from the Democrats. These marching orders happen all the time, where the exact same post will be displayed by multiple talking heads and pundits for the Democratic Party. David Hogg posted this: I support gun safety, but there is no such thing as a state public health emergency exception to the U.S. Constitution. And then right behind him in lockstep, along with hundreds of other paid shills for the DNC, Ted Lieu comes in, Representative Ted Lieu. I support gun safety laws. However, this order from the governor of New Mexico violates the U.S. Constitution. No state in the union can suspend the federal Constitution. There's no such thing as a state public health emergency exception to the U.S. Constitution. They're exactly the same. And the reason why Democrats are doing this, fairly simply, is because they understand that this is the abortion gaffe of the Supreme Court that killed the Republicans in the midterms and will have an impact in 2024. If the governors continue to do this like they always do, and you will see multiple governors do this, including California, New York, and other liberal states, you are going to have one of the biggest upsets in 2024 up and down. America will absolutely drive to the polls, and this will become the Roe v. Wade issue for 2024. I want to go ahead and focus on one last thing, and this took longer than I imagined, but I want you to look at New Mexico. Crimes and corrections ranked 47th out of 50 states. The economy, 44 out of 50. Education, dead last at 50. Healthcare, 38. 44th in infrastructure. Natural environment, 32. Congratulations on breaking the top 30. It's a desert. What do you have to do? Is sit there and watch it rain once in a while. Opportunity of 41. Over 2/3 of New Mexico is owned by the federal government. There is very little for the people there. Unfortunately, the economy has stalled unless you sell green chilies or do hot air balloon rides. The one thing New Mexico used to do, at least very well, was ensure that people could protect themselves. Because unfortunately, they never had the money to have enough police. They couldn't get to the rural areas, the untouched areas where county sheriffs could not get. So the farmer and the rancher and the people who worked there, the lands to the bone, could have firearms to protect from coyote and wolves and other things. But most importantly, anybody coming up from the southern border, because New Mexico does have a border issue. What you're doing is going to empower the gangs, the drug cartels who are in New Mexico, the people who traffic small children and young women across the border constantly, the amount of illegal crime that will come up into New Mexico in a city which is already riddled with one of the biggest meth problems in the United States. All you're asking for is more problems. This lady is an overreaching arch nemesis to the people. She should be recalled. She should be removed. And yes, dare I say, with due process, be arrested for dereliction of duty and for not fulfilling her oath of office. Folks, that's it for the Don't Unfriend Me show. Folks, you can reach me at The Dumb Show, thedumbshow.com, if you want to go ahead and write into the show or pick up a cool shirt, Why I Own a Firearm, 5 Reasons I Don't Need a Reason. Pick up that shirt at thedumbshow.com. Use code DUMB10, DUM10, to save 10%. Thanks for watching the Don't Unfriend Me show, folks. I will see you tonight at 8 o'clock with Olivia and I. God bless.
I'm David Boreanaz with the Cast of SEAL team, and we have an important message for returning vets.
We want you to know if you're struggling to cope, there's help and it's just a phone call away.
The Veterans Crisis Line is staffed with experienced professionals who know your struggles.
There's no greater sacrifice in service to our country. We're able to enjoy our freedoms because of it.
Your service is important, you are important.
For vets and their families, the Veterans Crisis Line is here to help 24 hours a day. Please call